to ask. How does it feel for you as my wife? So, in our previous episode, you mentioned how we have moved down to Johor and you still have a job in KL. So, we are in Johor, but your job is in KL. How does that work itself out?
Yeah, I really thank God that my boss allowed me to work remote. And yes, there is that thing called remote, right? My uncle, when he heard it, he was like, "Oh, you Gen Z stuff."
Yes.
But I do work from home and then I travel from time to time. So I really give thanks that my boss let me have this deal for the time being at least.
Wow, what an opportunity and a career. Which brings us to our today's conversation, which is choosing your career. And today we're gonna hear of how we, as a couple, chose our careers, and we just share our thought processes as we came to be what we are today. Yeah. How did you end up in your sector and what do you do today? Yeah, perhaps just share context for the listeners.
And I guess we can share both
Yeah.
where we are and how we ended up. For me, it goes way back. So I always tell this story to people when I was Form 3 going Form 4. If you are in the Malaysian government education system, in Form 4 you have to choose your stream, whether you're science stream or art stream. And that was when I realized I have no idea what I want to do. So that's when I started praying and I asked God, what do you want me to do in my life? I entered science stream, but the question was still at the back of my head. And during that time, there were 2 to 3 new teachers doing their practicum in my school. So they took over my science teachers' classes and they started teaching. And they weren't good. And my friends were struggling. And to be fair to them, it wasn't really their fault because there was a policy change at that time.
Right.
Where previously science and math was taught in Malay, and then during our time it was quite a recent switch into English.
Yeah, I remember.
So if you didn't have that language of command, you were really struggling as a teacher because you learned it in a completely different language. But that was when it really got me thinking, oh okay, so this is an across the board issue, it's not just a handful of teachers. And if it's a systemic issue, then what is going to happen to the next generation of Malaysian kids? And looking back then as a 16-year-old, I'm like, wow, I think about that kind of things. But so that was what started me on the trajectory of thinking about education, entering the education sector. Cut the long story short, I did an education degree, which is a great story for another time. And I always thought that I would end up in the classroom because I feel that's the greatest impact. And I still do enjoy very much being in the classroom. But it was during my university days when I was exposed to the fact that education is so big, right? And it takes so many players in the sector to put everything together. And it was when it piqued my interest in education policy. So I would say that education policy is still something that I'm very much interested in. And that also is how I've ended up doing different things across my job. I started out in the classroom, then I went to do more community education work, and then now I'm doing teacher training. So the goal is kind of to understand all these different areas so that you can make better decisions in education policy.
And just in case that the listeners do not know, where do you work currently?
So I'm currently in an NGO called Teach for Malaysia, where we recruit and we train young potential leaders to work in schools, government schools, high need schools, where you can make a change in the community in your 2 years there. Yeah.
So on my end, from the previous episode, you know that I work in this organization called Fellowship of Evangelical Students. And so for me, how did I end up where I end up, right? To be honest with you, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined any ounce of this sort of lifestyle. However, looking back, both my parents were center stage people. They knew how to draw the crowd, they had the gift of the gab, they knew how to talk, they knew how to entertain, and the starting skills were there. I had a gift from my parents to be able to just talk, right? And to just share things and to entertain and to share stories. And as I entered my degree, I decided to choose psychology out of the interest of wanting to understand the person better. So you can see where this is going. So psychology helped me understood the person better, and when I started working, my first job was in Methodist College. This is where I met Yan Ping. Yeah. Again, impact was within the classroom, but instead of teaching psychology, I taught this subject called character formation, where literally the students will be 12 weeks with me and I'll just talk about life. I get paid to talk about life, right? The struggles of pornography, the ideas of leadership, followership, how to do confrontation. So I had to deep dive onto research on the humanities aspect of everything. So I had to hone my skills of listening, hone my skills of empathy. And came some time when in my first job in Methodist College Kuala Lumpur that I had a crossroad to either upskill myself in coaching or upskill myself in theology. As you can guess, I chose theology, which up to today a lot of people might not fully grasp why I chose that instead of choosing a job that can potentially give me greater pay. But long story short, I am in Fellowship of Evangelical Students now for the trajectory that I took, because now with the gift of speaking and understanding people, and with the theology degree, I now focus on my skills of preaching and teaching God's word and spiritual mentoring, and naturally this will be the job that I'll probably end up in, with the skills and the trajectory I've going. So that's how I ended up in my sector where I'm at. So with all of this going on, right, with all of this job right now, what we are hearing, I mean the listeners are hearing, is both of us are in an NGO. It is not your typical sort of job like the lawyer, software engineer, mechanical engineer, doctor kind of job. So my first question is, how do we go about navigating such a workspace when the world trajectory or what they tell us, what success may be, is not the same?
Yeah. It's definitely not a conventional pathway, and even now I don't know how long I'll be in it. I don't know whether you will change careers as well. But I remember, so this didn't happen when we made the decision, but I feel like it's a good way to explain or just capture what we're doing and why it was easy to make that decision. We have a friend who is in social work, and when he was first considering social work, he was also thinking of those questions, right? Is it financially stable? Will I be able to provide for my family in the future? So on and so forth. And he spoke to someone in the field, and that person told him that, in this world, there are actually many different currencies. Of course, financial currency is a very prominent currency, and it is what the world often, throws at our face. But actually, the world runs on many, many different currencies, and it really depends what kind of currency you want to collect, invest in, and
So to interject, for our listeners, what then would you define currency as?
I would say currency is something that you accumulate, you collect, that enables you to cash out into something else, and it should give you it enables you to have transactions, but it also enables you to derive value and meaning.
So you were talking about how there are actually more than the type of currencies that we hear, which is financial currency. But perhaps continue on elaborating more on that.
Yeah, so if you read on social theories, Pierre Bourdieu, the common other currencies would be social capital, cultural capital. Some will say your brand capital even. If you are known for something, then it helps you generate certain doorways or even income.
Yeah, like Nike's brand. When you hear Nike, what's the tagline?
just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I follow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, how do you go about amassing certain currencies? What kind of currencies do you have?
I feel that I'm actually quite good in collecting social capital or working along that lines. And I only realized it when a few people told me. So I had a senior who told me that you're very good at pulling strings. I had a boss who told me that, every time you talk to a person, it's like you're forming a map in your head on where can I place this person. So every time she sees me talking to a new person, for me, I just really genuinely like to get to know people. And I want to know them for who they are and the human that they are. But she'll be like, oh, I can see Yan Ping in her head. It's like, add new entry of a person. So yeah, I do feel that I do social capital quite well. And social capital, maybe just to explain a little bit also, is you use the people that you know to be able to transfer it into something bigger or something else. Yeah. So for example, if you know someone in a company, then that gives you an advantage to nail maybe a high paying job. So that's your social capital.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think I do that quite well, but in terms of what I appreciate or what I like to cash out in is actually the currency of seeing other people flourishing, seeing humans flourishing. And that's very close to a teacher's heart, which is very hard to put in money terms, right? If you see your student's life turn around, it's very hard to put a value into it. And you may never reap like the financial rewards of it, but to me, that's also a very important currency. And I think you also function on different currencies. So you want to share a bit about the currencies that you function on?
Yeah, what I come to realize is that I think I enter all the rest of the currencies except the financial currency. Yeah, obviously. So jumping on to the whole teacher's heart of seeing a student flourish, back in my days in MCKL, that was my only goal because my subject is to teach this whole idea of character formation. So while I may not focus on them getting straight A's, I have the privilege to get them to think about and reflect on their growth as a person in their character. And so 6.5 years in that college and teaching, right? The students graduate and they leave and they go to their universities. Then they end up serving in their Christian fellowships there. And I guess one of the many social capitals of me, life for a better word, investing in them, is then they in turn remember me that there is this lecturer in MCKL who does this, and hence invites me over to their uni Christian fellowship to then continue sharing and teaching the Bible and whatnot. And I think that's one of the many ways where I didn't apply for any jobs, right? I didn't ask you ask me to speak and you pay me this much to say these things. It is just the whole idea of because of someone I know whom I journeyed with, they remember me and they go on. And out of the many capitals, right, the cultural capital, so these are a few things that I do. I'll name you one with a Nepali god and the other one with a Ajushi, a Korean uncle. So back in KL, in Kapong, there's this wonderful Korean homely food. The plug-in, the name of the shop is Sinui Kumai. Yeah, and there's this Ajushi there. And one of the reasons why I learn Korean for the fun of it is so that I can converse with him a little bit. You know, like, oh, 이거 주세요, you know, all that kind of thing. Like, this one please. And he'll like, 네, you know, 안녕하세요, you know, 안녕히 하세요. So okay, I'll start the Koreans. So as I break that cultural barrier to show that he mattered enough for me to want to learn his language. The last day I ate there, I said, Ajushi, you know, this is my last day with you, and I just want to say thank you so much for the food that you cook. And I told him, your food has a dash of just cook with love lah, you know. And he was like, oh, I'm gonna miss you. You're one of my most favorite customers. And so the conversation went on for a while, and then I ate my food. Then I left. Upon paying for my food and I left, he said, hold on, I have something for you. He took out a packet with 8 gyoza dumplings in it, and it says, this is for you. He did the most fatherly thing. My heart was so warm. I think I almost broke into tears. I think, right? Because he says like, when you go down there in Johor, you take care. Take it easy. Be strong. Then I was like, wow, right?
Just got free dumplings.
Yeah, because so if you use investment terms, right, then one could say that I cashed out that social capital out of that culmination of learning Korean and just talking to him, gained me 8 dumplings. I think another fun thing is how, so as this whole idea of social capital comes from my theological understanding that all of us are created in the image of God, which means everyone has the dignity and value worth regardless of the skill that you bring to the table. And so one of the many things I do is I always memorize the names of my guards in the condo. Yeah. And I learn a bit of Nepali. I say namaste, Yeshule tapalai prem ganu hunja, all these kind of terms.
Which, by the way, what does that mean?
I think, since I haven't met a Nepali guy in a long time after moving in, is that something about Jesus loves you a lot, right? And so that is a social capital because I took the effort to know them. And the amazing thing is, when I ask what's your name, right, they give me their names and I call them out and they say thank you. It's not like, oh yes, and your name is, no, they say thank you so much because they appreciate it. And this is how it cashes out again, right? So now, to enter a condo, you need your access card. But because they know me, I don't need my access card. Upon seeing me, they just open the bar, they wish me, they say, how's your wife doing? Have you eaten yet? And I go my merry way.
And I would like to say it also extends to beyond just him. So when my sister came to visit, she had to do the, visitor card and everything. But because I walked up at the time when she was about to fill the card, the guard looked out, he was like, oh, dia dengan kamu, okay lah. So bypass the system.
And I guess in short, that these are what I call the kind of social capital, that the currency we were discussing, where I live in a kind of world where I don't purposely mainly upskill myself so good that I'm supposed to be paid this much. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying my career decision, this is how it turned out to be lah. Yeah.
But having said that, it is not always easy to run in different currencies, especially with, like when I said, the world does put economic currency a lot in your face.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends are very successful by the world standards, and sometimes when I go for gatherings, I do feel that FOMO, I'll go for uni gatherings and, oh hi, haven't met you for a long time, how have you been? And they'll be sharing like, yeah, I was in France for 2 years, then I moved to Shanghai, or, working for Google, and, all the big names, big places, exciting adventures, and then they'll turn to me and go like, oh, so how about you? What have you been up to? And I'll be like, I've been in the same job for 5 years, I'm teaching in a classroom, I'm in an NGO, and you do feel very out of place, and sometimes you wonder, should I be doing what I'm doing? Am I wrong in sort of not doing what everyone else is doing? But one thing that helped me was when I shared this with a friend once, and she's also on the, she's really doing places, Amazon, going places. And I shared, maybe 5-10 years down the road when we have our next school reunion, I might not have anything to say in common with you guys. And she said this that was very comforting for me. She asked me, do you like your life? Do you enjoy what you're doing? And I said, yes. And then she said, then it tells me that you know what you want, and that's why you have chosen to do this. Some of us might not know what we want, that's why we're rolling about. But more importantly, if you like what you're doing, then that awkwardness once in every 5 years or 10 years when you meet up with people and you don't know what to say, what's the big deal in the scale of that 5 years of enjoying your life. So that was very helpful to think about.
Yeah, I think even for me, I then find myself, reading books on investing and how to manage your finances and reading on stocks. just to know enough to make the right financial decisions, to be good stewards of the money that we have, kind of thing. Yeah. And I think so I think it takes a lot of wisdom in just navigating which currencies works for you. And for us, I think we didn't even think about, oh, this was the currency we wanted. Rather, this was the kind of focus we went, and this is the life we lived, and this is how we cashed out thus far. Yeah. I mean, after all, it's because we knew someone that we had the privilege to stay in this house. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, right, after sharing, just to do a quick recap, we have seen that our decisions were not your typical decisions that the world is calling on the economic currency.
So far,
Yeah. At this point of time, and we have shared our thought process, how we came to be who we are today, and at the same time, it's not always smooth sailing. So then I guess what we can share right now is what is next for us, right? Yeah, why not you go first on that?
Oh, I wish I could answer that question. I struggle with it from time to time, mainly because of two things. One is the kind of path that I'm planning for, or I think I'm planning for. So I mentioned that I'm very interested in education policy, and the way I look at it is, number one, have the skills to build policy, but also make sure I know what's on the ground so that I can make better decisions if I ever get there. And that has led me to travel through different areas in education. But what that means is jumping a lot. So, just when you're getting good at teaching chemistry, teaching physics, then you change. And then you kind of need to start from scratch. And then now teacher training, figuring out what's this whole universe about. And, maybe someday I might have to jump. But every time that happens, then there's a fork, right? Because you get really comfortable and you're like, oh, maybe I can do this and I can be good at it. Then should I then just stay and become like an expert in that field? Or should I pivot again? And sometimes I also ask myself, you talk so much about policy, will you actually like doing it? You haven't really done it properly. In Malaysia, I feel that it's not the easiest thing to do policy because you either end up in government or think tanks. And if you do it in government, you do it in Malay. I can read a 50-page policy in Malay. Can I write a 50-page? I might need ChatGPT. If you do think tanks, then you've got to go broad. You can't just, stay in education.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of haziness on, can I really end up where I want to be? And that's one thing that I struggle a lot with. The second thing I struggle with is actually how much do I plan, especially as a Christian? So when you work in corporate or companies, they always talk about your 5-year plan, your goals, you break it down into actionable steps.
Yeah.
But it somehow doesn't work that way in God's world, and it hasn't worked that way in my life either. When God says it's time, it's time. When God opens a door, He opens a door. So
and whatever you plan might not come to happen. Yeah.
So how do you live by faith while being strategic,
at the same time,
and wise, and sitting down and counting your cost?
Yeah.
So a lot of things are uncertain for me. I'm taking it one step at a time. That's where I am. How about you?
In fact, I'm just gonna plug in a bit more, so we'll have these things where we walk together every night and she'll share with me, oh, Eddryll, what's next? Oh, what I'm gonna do? There's this. And it came to a point where I say, dear, there's this book called So Good That They Cannot Ignore You by Cal Newport. You should check that book out. And his other books is really good too. And I said that book will help give you some clarity on your direction. Yeah. So what kind of clarity has that book given you?
Yeah, it was a good book, I do admit. I think if anything, it gave me a reassurance, or it made me comfortable with not having so many answers. So that book talks a lot about this thing called the craftsman mindset versus the passion mindset. So passion mindset is what do I like to do? What am I passionate about? What does the world have to offer me? Versus craftsman mindset is more of what skills can I accumulate so that I can offer to the world, and then I just jump on opportunities when they arise. And he said it's more helpful to think from a craftsman mindset because a passion mindset is really, really hard to live by. And how to get to the craftsman mindset where eventually you will, eventually find your passion, but you don't start with it that way, is to just make sure you are so good, like the book says, that they can't ignore you. And it does talk about getting to accumulating till you get to the cutting edge of your industry, that you can make this leap into the unknown or innovation, and you have a say in things. Yeah, so I think for me, being okay with, I don't have all the answers, but I will hold on to that craftsman mindset and try to develop my skills to the best that I can.
In fact, there's this other concept called play, passion, and purpose, which I think comes in line. I forgot who said it, but one of the educators that comes in line with the craftsman mindset. Because you see, as a young child, you are to explore the world and you're supposed to play around and just have fun. And as you grow older, then you gain certain passions and likings to certain things that you love to do, right? But I think the whole goal is not to stay at the passion mindset, but rather to grow to a purposeful mindset, by which you said, this is what I can give back to the world. And I think that's in line with when Cal Newport says the craftsman's mindset lah. Yeah. And I think for me, if I'm using Cal Newport's book on this one skill that's so good that can ignore you, I guess where I'm at today, what's next for me, right?
Yeah, I feel like you're quite close to where you are and what you're really good at already.
Yeah, I feel that too. Because I've been doing almost the same thing, which is spiritual mentoring since my uni days actually.
But I also feel like you've pivoted, because there are a lot of people who do this spiritual mentoring, but you have a separate edge, which is like the digital side of it.
Yes, which I was about to share. Okay, so I love puns and I love to create memes, right? That's something that you can imagine what kind of capital you can gain just by making memes. But yet, I just remain just as how lame people might still think about it. I had this vision of just needing to create Malaysian-centered Christian memes to help disciple the online generation that are churchless or they cannot go to church for some reason. And that has led me to multiple open doors when I started Malaysian Christian memes. Now we have a team of 5 serving alongside with me. And yeah, one of the many, the word you use on the edge, over the edge.
Getting to the cutting edge of your industry.
Yeah, the cutting edge of industry. And if my cutting edge industry is intentional discipleship and all that, the next innovation, at least for me, was digital discipleship. How then do you point others to Christ in an online manner? And that I'm not just the only one, by the way. There are a few of us. Some take a more positive side, you must go to the metaverse and create a metaverse church and all that. And I'm more on the negative side, that the whole idea of technology, okay, we're recording now, right? Is geared to take advantage of your vulnerabilities, and how I approach my discipleship methods on that line as well. So these are some of the things that I have entered into. And so if you ask me what's next, sorry I hit the mic. If you ask me what's next, I think it's to continue to hone in at least on 3 things. My spiritual mentoring, who do I journey with and how do I go about. I've had the privilege of having a lot of people journey with me, and with that I always had this vision of wanting to make discipleship a norm rather than a privilege. Hone in on my Bible teaching skills and my preaching, right? For wherever I'm at today, I know that there are way better preachers still, and I still admire them, and I want to learn so much from them. And I know I'm at, as much as I probably can do an expositional topic on a book or what, I know that there's still much I need to grow in. And finally, in the digital realm of things, in content creating. And I think I want to do content creation not for the sake of becoming viral. A social media influencer by which I am influenced by Christ, and all that the rest can see is Christ-likeness in the whole of me and my team and I, you see. So I think that's what's next for me, to continue honing in on these skills that I do not know how the world sees it, that I'll be so good at it that I don't know who cannot ignore me. You know what I mean? But because I'm in a whole different economy now, my skills do not give me back the money's worth in terms of the economic financial currency. If you realize, I took a 40% pay cut for my job and all this, and one thing I struggle in this what's next is that up to today, I don't think majority of some of my communities understand the decisions I'm making. They still say, Eddryll, you're not being paid your worth, you're being taken advantage of and all that. I hear them, I know what they're trying to get at, and it's hard to explain them a whole different economy, right? And so which means they will not understand the decisions that I make. I think I have to be okay with that as well. So that's just some of the things that came to my mind as we are discussing this what's next. You have anything to add on?
Just want to ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you think you are in terms of the skills that you mentioned?
I think I am a 6.8 if decimals are a thing. Yeah. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I think the moment you reach past 5 out of 10 means you're above average. The moment you're 5 and above, it means someone wants you and you're able to do your job, right? So which means above 5 means it's improvement all the way. And I think that's where I still see myself. What about you?
Before I answer that, I think also because your industry is quite niche, so it is, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it is easy enough to stand out, especially when you're young, you're this demographic, and you're dealing with those things together. So
and also maybe because whatever I'm doing is very pioneering in essence. Yeah, so
especially in Malaysia.
There's no precedence. Yeah, there's a lot in other countries that does what I'm doing, but I think in my context, not really.
Not as much.
Not as much, yeah. Yeah, so back to you. How will you score yourself?
I think in terms of like say teaching, chemistry, physics, I'll be a comfortable 7 or 8. But like say teacher training, 3 or 4. Policy making, I'll say 2. Mainly because I just did the studies, the masters, and I never practiced it. But the hope is that accumulating all these points in different places, when I actually do something where I can put all of them together, then it will amount to something. So that's my game plan. I don't know if it's a smart game plan, but that's my bet at the moment.
Okay. So to do recap, right? Just in case the listeners get so lazy that they just want to skip to the end.
TLDR.
Yeah, which you can. I think first we started off with the whole idea of where we came from, how we entered the same industry, which means back to you guys. Maybe you guys can reflect how did you arrive where you're at. That will help you understand your trajectory, your values, and the skills that you gain along the way. I think the next thing is to understand what are the currencies that work for you. Right, so for us, it would seem that this social currency, cultural currency, is what we've been working on and accumulating. And then, so what works for you, and lastly, to come to a position to have a craftsman mindset, to know what is it that you can give back to the world rather than what you want to receive from the world. And what you can give back will give you at least few insights. What the world is actually demanding, what's the right demands of, and what the needs, and what the skills that's needed to gain, to upskill yourself, to be that craftsman that you need to be, that and be so good at it that they can't ignore you. Yeah, do you have anything else to add?
I think hearing what we have been sharing, it made me realize that we came to different places in different ways. Your front was a bit hazier, and now you feel like you've kind of landed, whereas my front was clearer, and then now I'm a bit hazy.
That's so
right?
true.
And I believe that it's okay, because God leads different people on different pathways, and it's also okay as a couple to have different trajectories and be able to support each other in different sectors. And one more thing that I realized is that it is quite hard to not focus on the economic currency, because it's just so in your face. So being very intentional in exploring all the other currencies is something valuable to think about.
I have to ask. how does it feel for you as my wife, seeing me in a position that is clearer? Yeah, how do you feel about that? Like,
Well, obviously, I rejoice with you, and I'm glad that we're not two hazy people. Imagine what our conversations will be like if we're like two, lost sheep.
sure, yeah.
Sometimes it does feel like, oh, it's my turn. Sometimes you just feel like, well, I'm also a person who enjoys playing a supporting role than a leader role. So then it makes me think, can I support you in the ministries? And that is also my sort of life's purpose. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Just to say, she's been doing a wonderful job. The line that I use is, "I would not be half the man I am today without her." Yeah.
Likewise.
Oh, wonderful. So I guess that's it for now.
This is Teo-logy Podcast.
Till next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.